A development that unfolded not over weeks or months, but in a matter of hours. Hours that changed the calculus of 3 continents. Hours that sent encrypted alerts racing through every major intelligence agency from Langley to London to Tel Aviv. Hours that forced heads of state out of scheduled meetings and into emergency briefings they were told could not wait. What the intercepted message revealed today crossed a line that Allied intelligence had hoped would hold, and when that line broke, the Western response did not hesitate. They responded with precision, urgency, and a level of coordination that the world has not seen since the tensest days of the Cold War's final chapter. This is not a drill. This is not a rumor. And this is not speculation. This is what happened and what it means for every capital on Earth tonight. For months now, there had been signals, not official statements, not formal declarations, just signals that a hostile state actor was preparing something unprecedented in scope. This actor has been aggressive before, yes, but they have been methodical in their aggression. Their moves have followed a certain rhythm, a pattern, almost a predictability, one that Western analysts had grown accustomed to reading. But what set off alarm bells inside Allied intelligence networks this week was that the pattern went silent. Analysts who monitor hostile communications and military posturing know the indicators. The chatter that precedes a coordinated move, gone. The logistical signals that telegraph troop positioning, gone. The low-level diplomatic messaging that usually leaks before a major action, gone. The sudden disappearance of key figures from normal communication channels. All of it went quiet simultaneously. And in the world of intelligence, silence is not reassurance. Silence is the loudest possible alarm, because whenever a state actor with a history of bold, destabilizing moves goes quiet across all channels at once, it doesn't mean they've stopped planning. It means the plan has already moved from preparation into execution. Senior analysts inside 3 separate Western intelligence agencies flagged this unusual communication silence within a 48-hour window. What they found when they dug deeper was not reassuring. It was, by multiple accounts, deeply alarming. The absence of noise wasn't random. It was coordinated. It was deliberate, and it was covering something. Early this week, Allied signal intelligence networks detected what they described as a highly encrypted, multi-layered burst transmission, including specific encoded language and command structure formatting that had not been observed in over 4 years. Let that sink in. 4 years. The last time this specific type of message architecture was used, it preceded a major destabilizing action that the world is still dealing with consequences from today. These are the kinds of transmissions that hostile state actors only generate when they are signaling something very specific, a strategic shift in posture, a preparation for kinetic action, or the activation of an already positioned network of assets. Allied observers didn't know which category this fell into, or whether, in the most alarming interpretation, it fell into all 3 at once. But what they did know, what they confirmed through cross-agency verification, was that the actor responsible was changing their strategic posture in a fundamental way. And when a nuclear-armed authoritarian state with demonstrated willingness to act outside international norms shifts its strategic posture without explanation, even by a small measure, every capital in the Western alliance pays attention immediately. The message itself, once partially decrypted through coordinated Allied effort, contained references that analysts are now describing as operational in nature. Not theoretical, not aspirational, operational. That word, operational, is the one that has every briefing room on edge tonight, because operational means it's not a plan on paper. It means something has already been set in motion. The emergency advisory issued by Allied intelligence leadership tonight was not normal. It was not routine. It was not symbolic. It was urgent in a way that senior intelligence officials, people who have seen decades of crises, coups, and conflicts, describe privately as rare. Source after source, in briefing after briefing, described the hostile actors' intercepted communications as deliberate, coordinated across multiple domains simultaneously, and perhaps most importantly, designed to move faster than the Western response could form. Speed is the strategy. Act before the alliance can unify. Act before the condemnations can be drafted. Act before the countermeasures can be deployed. But that strategy only works if the target hesitates. The Western response did not hesitate. In fact, the Allied response activated today was among the most synchronized and rapid we have seen in the modern intelligence era. Here's what we know. Within hours of the initial intercept being verified and escalated, Allied partners activated enhanced monitoring protocols across all relevant theaters. These weren't routine surveillance procedures. These were elevated crisis-tier intelligence postures, systems and assets that allied nations only deploy when they are preparing to respond to an active, high-stakes threat. Emergency consultations were initiated between alliance heads. Secure lines between capitals that are rarely used in peacetime lit up throughout the night. And by the time morning briefings were delivered in multiple Western capitals, the decision had already been made. This would not be met with silence. Tonight, confirmed sources within Allied intelligence confirmed that Western partners launched a coordinated information and diplomatic operation targeting the hostile actors' key strategic nodes, including a specific communication infrastructure hub that had recently been reactivated for what analysts believe was the purpose of coordinating the very network referenced in the intercepted message. Allied operatives moved before the hostile actor could re-encrypt and compartmentalize. They identified the communication architecture. They identified the logistical networks feeding it. They identified the front organizations and cutout structures that were likely being used to support the operation described in the intercepted transmission. In other words, they targeted the nervous system, not just the hand. The infrastructure that would have made the full operation functional was identified and countered before it could be fully activated. This is what made the Allied advisory so urgent. The hostile actor's intercepted message wasn't symbolic. It wasn't posturing for domestic consumption. It was actionable, a live operational communication in a network that was already moving. It represented the kind of coordinated, multi-domain action that could reshape the security architecture of an entire region if left unchecked. And Allied intelligence, understanding that fully, responded with force, not military force, but strategic, coordinated, intelligent force that struck at the heart of what was being prepared. Not recklessly, not impulsively, but with the kind of precision that only comes from months of patient intelligence work finally converging at exactly the right moment. They didn't react blindly. They didn't broadcast their capabilities. They targeted the right nodes. They moved at the right time, and they did it before the window closed. And here's where the story becomes even more significant. Senior analysts now believe that the hostile actor's latest move was specifically designed to test the cohesion of the Western alliance after a period of visible internal disagreement among allied partners. The calculation was calculated and cold, probe the alliance's unity, move when they appear distracted, strike at the seams. The hostile actor wanted to see whether Western partners would fragment, whether the disagreements that had played out in public over recent months would translate into a delayed, divided, or diluted response. But instead, the exact opposite happened. Allied partners didn't fragment. They converged. They produced a response that was so swift, so coordinated, that even the hostile actor, who was not easily surprised, could not have anticipated the speed. You don't get this actor's attention easily. They have operated for years with a calculated confidence born from watching Western responses arrive too late, too divided, or too watered down to matter. But today the alliance did. Intelligence officials speaking with select media under strict anonymity described the hostile actor's gambit as a classic seam probe, an attempt to find and exploit the gap between what allies publicly commit to and what they are actually willing to do under pressure. But the response today proved that the alliance remains both credible and capable. Their actions were not only strategically sound, they were executed with a level of interagency and international precision so exact that even veteran observers described it as remarkable. That precision matters because it shows something fundamental. It shows that the internal disagreements that the hostile actor was counting on to slow the response did not penetrate to the operational level. It shows that the Western alliance is not a paper coalition. It is a functioning, responsive, coordinated, strategic entity, and it demonstrated that tonight. As reports continued coming in throughout the evening, the full scale of the coordinated Allied response became clearer. Partner intelligence agencies across multiple continents activated joint task forces, forcing a reassessment of the hostile actor's operational timeline and creating immediate pressure on their planning cycle. Technical intelligence teams targeted communication nodes that had been quietly repositioned and upgraded in the last 6 months. Upgrades that, taken individually, looked benign, but taken together, painted a picture of deliberate preparation. Human intelligence assets operating in proximity to the hostile actors' networks reportedly confirmed details about the origin and purpose of the intercepted message that technical collection alone could not have provided. This wasn't just a defensive reaction. This wasn't just a monitoring operation. This was active, forward-leaning strategic intelligence work. This was an alliance demonstrating operational coherence under pressure. And operational coherence is the one thing the hostile actor has struggled to counter since its early assumptions about Western resolve were first proven wrong. For every probing move they have made, Allied partners have countered with something that complicated their calculus, extended their timelines, and forced them to reconsider. Tonight was no different. In fact, tonight may have been the most consequential such moment since the pattern began. Remember, this actor thought the alliance would hesitate. They thought internal divisions would buy them time. They thought the sheer complexity of what they were preparing would obscure it until it was too late for a coherent response. They thought, as they have thought before, that speed and secrecy would defeat preparation and partnership. But tonight, the exact opposite is happening. The speed of the Allied response matched and exceeded the speed of the hostile actor's preparation. The secrecy of the operation was penetrated not at the edges, but near its core. And the preparation of Allied intelligence services, years in the making, proved more than adequate to the moment. History will record that the hostile actor made a fundamental miscalculation. They assumed that the fractures they saw on the surface and the political disagreements, the public disputes, the wavering statements from individual officials went all the way down. They do not. Underneath the surface noise, the alliance's intelligence and security architecture remains deeply structurally integrated, and that integration is what the hostile actor failed to account for. What makes this moment so critical and so revealing is that the hostile actor's latest move happened at a time when its leadership is under enormous and compounding internal pressure. Hardliners within the system want escalation. They want visible, dramatic action that projects strength to a domestic audience that has been fed a steady diet of nationalist rhetoric. Pragmatists within the system want leverage, a move significant enough to force negotiations on their terms without triggering a response they cannot manage. Economic reformers want relief. Sanctions and international isolation have created pressures that no amount of propaganda fully masks. And the military establishment wants resources, commitments, prioritizations, and strategic direction that the current leadership has been ambiguous about providing. The leader at the center of this is balancing these competing demands while simultaneously managing the consequences of previous strategic miscalculations that have not resolved the way they were promised to. And when leaders in that position make sudden, dramatic moves that break from established patterns, moves that cross lines that were previously respected, they are rarely doing it from a position of strength. They are doing it from pressure. They are doing it from a place of vulnerability masquerading as confidence. The intercepted message, understood in this context, was not the action of a confident actor pressing an advantage. It was the action of a leader who feels the walls closing and is reaching for something dramatic enough to change the conversation. Allied intelligence understood this, and they responded accordingly. The Allied Advisory, now formally distributed to all relevant partner governments and security organizations, was designed to signal clearly and unambiguously that the Western alliance is not willing to allow the hostile actor to reshape the regional or global security environment through coercion, deception, or sudden unilateral action. Senior officials from multiple Allied governments said plainly that the intercepted communications and the posture they revealed were fundamentally inconsistent with the norms of responsible state behavior and the basic obligations of international security. That is diplomatic language for, we know what you were planning, we know how far along you were, and we are telling you directly that we will not allow it to proceed. You do not usually hear that tone, that combination of specificity and directness from Allied governments unless what is at stake is serious enough to override every instinct toward caution, hedging, and deliberate ambiguity. The fact that this language appeared tonight in this form, distributed this widely and this quickly, tells you everything you need to know about how seriously the alliance is treating what the intercepted message contained. Meanwhile, the lead Allied nation's head of state addressed a closed session of their National Security Council in a pointed, unambiguous address that has since been partially disclosed to select media. They said, what was intercepted was not a warning we could set aside. It required an immediate, coordinated, and definitive response. They said, our partners acted with us, not behind us or ahead of us, and that unity is itself the most important message we send tonight. And they said, the message we received told us what they intended. The response we gave tells them what we are prepared to do. These are not rhetorical flourishes crafted for public consumption. These are statements from a leadership structure that understands, with full access to the intelligence, with full awareness of what the decrypted message contained, just how high the stakes of this moment have become. When a head of state addresses their National Security Council with that kind of direct, unambiguous language, it is because the situation genuinely warrants it. Tonight, it does. Here's what makes the situation even more complex and more concerning. The hostile actor's intercepted message was not an isolated communication. Along with the primary transmission, Allied signals intelligence also detected. A secondary actor with known alignment to the hostile state simultaneously increased encrypted communications with known intermediary networks operating in two separate regions. A third-party logistics network previously assessed as dormant showed renewed activity consistent with pre-operational preparation in the 72-hour window before the intercept was made, and a pattern of financial transactions flagged by partner financial intelligence units moved in a direction consistent with the activation of previously prepared operational funds. All of this happened within the same narrow window of time. This is the detail that elevates tonight's story beyond a single intercepted message. When a hostile state actor moves multiple pieces simultaneously, communications, logistics, finances, and secondary networks, it is not testing the waters. It is beginning a sequence. And sequences, once started, have their own momentum. The Allied response tonight was, in part, designed to break that momentum before it became self-sustaining. Analysts inside the Western intelligence community are now working through several distinct possibilities for what the hostile actor was actually preparing. One is that they were preparing a major influence and disinformation operation targeting upcoming electoral processes in multiple Allied democracies, using the reactivated network infrastructure as the backbone for a coordinated, multi-platform, multi-language campaign designed to fracture public trust. Another possibility is that they were attempting to use the cover of diplomatic engagement to position a covert leverage operation, gathering compromising material on key decision makers in Allied governments for use at a strategically chosen moment. A third possibility, and the one that is worrying the most senior officials tonight, is that the hostile actor was preparing to simultaneously activate all of the above in a coordinated multi-domain operation designed to overwhelm the alliance's ability to respond coherently by attacking on too many fronts at once, an operation designed not to win any single battle, but to make every battle harder. But today, Allied intelligence took that card off the table. They didn't wait for confirmation of which option was being pursued. They didn't wait for the operation to become visible. They didn't wait for the damage to begin and then attempt to limit it. They moved first, moved precisely, and moved with enough force to disrupt the preparation before the execution could begin. What we are watching now is a test of strategic credibility in one of the most consequential periods of the post-Cold War era. The hostile actor wants to see whether the Western alliance will accept a new status quo, one where their activities, no matter how aggressive, are met only with statements and never with consequences. The Allied response wants to demonstrate clearly that no such status quo will be accepted, that every escalation will be met with a counter, every probe will be answered, and every attempt to exploit division will instead reveal unity. Allied governments want to prevent the normalization of covert multi-domain aggression as an acceptable tool of statecraft, and the broader international community, the nations watching from outside the immediate confrontation, wants to prevent a world in which the rules-based international order is simply abandoned by any actor powerful enough to ignore it. Tonight, all of these objectives converged. And the intercepted message, the transmission that started this, became the moment at which the alliance chose to draw a visible, unambiguous line. Tonight, we have heard from intelligence officials who are now engaged in around-the-clock monitoring of every relevant communications channel associated with the hostile actor and their network. They say the initial response to the Allied countermove has been a return to the same communication silence that preceded the original transmission, suggesting the hostile actor is reassessing. They say there are preliminary indicators that at least one component of the operation referenced in the intercepted message has been stood down, at least temporarily. And they say the hostile actor's decision to activate this particular network at this particular moment is likely part of a broader strategic pressure campaign intended to exhaust Allied attention and resources across multiple theaters simultaneously, a strategy that has shown limited success in the past, but which the hostile actor continues to refine. But the Western alliance is not exhausted. In fact, tonight demonstrated the opposite. The Allied response, swift, coordinated, and strategically precise, sent a direct message to the hostile actor that their timing had been anticipated, their methods had been penetrated, and their network had been compromised before it could deliver results. And it sent a message to every other capital watching tonight that the alliance remains capable of rising to the moment when the moment demands it. As this story continues to develop, we expect more details to emerge about the full contents of the intercepted message and the complete scope of what was being prepared. But what we do know tonight is that the Allied response was timely in the deepest sense of that word. It arrived before the operation could reach its intended target. It arrived with enough force and clarity to create genuine disruption in the hostile actors' planning, and it arrived as a demonstration to allies, to adversaries, and to the watching world that the Western intelligence architecture, for all the noise and division visible at its political surface, remains deeply functional at its operational core. What happens next will depend significantly on what the hostile actor chooses to do in the days immediately ahead. If they stand down, if the intercepted message proves to be the high watermark of this particular campaign, tonight will be remembered as the moment Allied intelligence moved precisely at the critical point and prevented something significant. If they escalate, if the response to tonight's disruption is a renewed attempt through different means, Allied partners have already shown they are positioned, they are coordinated, and they are watching. They have shown they are ready to respond. Not eventually, not reluctantly, immediately, and with the full weight of the most sophisticated intelligence alliance in history. And tonight, for the first time in months, the hostile actor appears to be genuinely uncertain. The network they built is compromised. The timing they chose backfired. The division they were counting on did not materialize. And when an actor who has operated from calculated confidence for years suddenly finds themselves uncertain, the silence that follows is a different kind of silence. It isn't the silence of preparation. It is the silence of recalculation. The hostile actor is quiet tonight. Too quiet. And when an actor of this kind goes quiet after a setback, after a plan has been disrupted, after a capability has been exposed, it means they are choosing their next move with more care than they thought they would need to, because tonight they learned something they have conveniently forgotten in the years of incremental gains and unanswered provocations, that the alliance is watching, not occasionally, not reactively, but constantly and with extraordinary depth. That silence does not mean safety when the other side has already broken your codes, and that the Western response, when it comes, will not be the fragmented, delayed, and divided thing they built their strategy around expecting. This story is far from over, but tonight one thing is clear. The intercepted message told Allied intelligence everything they needed to know. The response they delivered told the hostile actor everything they need to understand. And the world watching tonight received a reminder, stark, timely, and necessary, that the architecture of international security is not maintained by declarations alone. It is maintained by capability, by resolve, and by the willingness to act when action is the only answer that means anything. We will be here watching every detail as the next phase of this critical story unfolds.